and welcome to this week's Business of Property podcast. I'm Stuart.
And I'm Simon.
He's remembered who he is. We're both property people running our own businesses, and this podcast is just us chatting, as we often do, about anything and everything property. And this week, Simon, we thought we'd start with a quick update, given the stamp duty news, on your plans regarding the property that you were looking to sell, and then you thought you were going to remortgage. So we thought we'd start with a quick update on that. So I don't know if you want to give everyone a very quick summary on what we talked about previously before we talk about next thoughts.
I think I have just about recovered from fits of laughter, having screwed up the intro for you. Hopefully I can. We talked a little bit about the rumours around stamp duty changes a while ago, and I speculated that it probably wouldn't affect property investors, and I was wrong. It does affect property investors. So we get a stamp duty holiday along with everybody else. This doesn't cover the 3% surcharge that property investors pay on additional homes, but the core stamp duty.
Can I just add to that as well, because this is personal experience, it also doesn't cover if you haven't had a place of residence for greater than 3 years. But we don't need to talk about that right now, but that's I'm just adding that because it affects someone personally, i.e. me.
Well, you should not live in rented accommodation, shouldn't you? Well, it's not for so long anyway.
True.
Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it, that there is that time limit on it. Because you did have a personal residence before and you sold it.
Yeah.
And you're now looking at buying a personal residence again. But yes, it's just been too long, and they're going to sting you for an extra 3%.
Yeah, I sold the private residence to start the property business just to bring this full circle. That's what happened. But we were talking about your plan.
Perhaps you should convince your wife and children to move into a property without a working bathroom or kitchen, so that you can avoid stamp duty entirely.
You haven't met my wife, have you?
Anyway, let's get back to stamp duty holidays. So with the stamp duty holiday now being in place, and hopefully that making it more appealing to sell properties and buy property, the house that my brother and I had been thinking about selling earlier in this year to give us funds to invest elsewhere, and then COVID hit and we changed our minds and thought, okay, we'll hold it for a while. We'll remortgage it instead, maybe at some point, depending on whether we want to try and time the market or not, but that's another issue. And then the Chancellor threw in this stamp duty holiday just to confuse us a bit more. And we've now gone full circle and think, well, maybe this is a good time to sell it after all. So we're now recircling to that and looking again at approaching the possible private buyer that expressed interest before, and we even think we might just put it out onto the open market if they still say no, just to see what happens.
Why not?
The slight complication is that it is tenanted, and whether we would try to sell it tenanted and limit our market, I don't know, or whether we would say that we would sell it to anyone and then obviously serve a Section 21 if needed for the tenant to leave. It might obviously put some buyers off and potentially complicate and prolong the sale process. But don't know. That's one of the benefits of the potential private buyer, is that they were happy to buy it as an investment. So with the tenant.
There is, I'm sure you're aware that I know there are estate agents now that specialise in tenanted properties as well. So, and I think they charge similar fees to standard estate agents.
Yeah, the problem, or a problem, with selling it tenanted is that the yield calculation looks very bad on it.
Yeah.
The private buyer that we were talking to before have other interests in the property, so there's they overlook that, I think, for their other potential.
What's the gross yield percentage?
Oh, now you're asking. I think think it's something around 3% or something when I worked it out before. It's
Okay.
pretty bad.
It's pretty low, yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's a high value property, but low rent for the sort of size of the property, and particularly size of the plot. There's more land there, but obviously that doesn't tend to increase the rent very much. But the other element of this is something we'd started looking at when we were going to sell it before, and then obviously gave up on, but now we've had to come back to, is that we've got a very interesting back garden history on this property. And it used to be longer than it is now. And a bottom chunk of it was sold off for a development, not in the same street.
So you sold it?
No, this is before our time. So this was many, many years ago. We're talking decades ago. So this is a development that's approached from a different road, sort of on the other side of this section of land. And as part of that development, the whole structure of the land, sort of the heights and access points and shape of the land as a whole was changed, including the plot next door to this house, which was sort of recreated, if you like, as part of all these changes. And as that happened, the plots were sort of standardized. So the house ended up with a more rectangular plot, as did the one next door to it. And then the development at the end was a much bigger sort of plot, which is more standard-ish shape. And that's all great. And that's been there for a long time. The garden has got fences that show where the edges are, in fact, walls for some of them. And there's plants and other garden features. So it's quite clear it's a garden, has been for, I say, tens of years. However, the title plan doesn't show this. It still shows an odd-shaped, elongated garden. It's got an extra section of that elongated garden sort of coloured in, saying that this is no longer part of this title plan because it was sold off. But the shape is still wrong for the rest of the garden. So we now need to work out how to approach the Land Registry or go through a process of getting that updated so that it actually matches with what reality is. If you look at the title plans for the properties all around it, they seem correct. No one else seems to have this extra corner of our garden in their title plans or anything. It just doesn't seem to be anywhere. So yeah, we're investigating or re-investigating the process for this. There are lots of forms on the Land Registry related to this and lots of documentation, and it's all rather unclear. There are certain forms that sort of say, fill in this form for a change to a title plan. And it's just completely generic, including spaces where it says, and fill in the fee for this change. I don't know. I've got no idea what the fee for this change should be. And they've got a price list, but it's so confusing. So yeah, we are unsure whether we need to sort of deal with a land surveyor or a solicitor, sort of conveyancer, or both, or whatever. So we are reading documentation and investigating at the moment. It's not as obvious as I would hope it could be.
Yeah, it's quite a strange one, but so my experience of it is, I think so. You know, I've just undergone a title split, which completed last week.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. It's been a long. Where are we? Well, we're as we record this towards the back end of July, and yeah, I started the process October, November, maybe, and yeah, it's involved solicitors. The one bit that I did find the easiest actually was the changing of the title. Now, I think there is an argument to say that you could possibly do it yourself. I mean, I'm trying to remember the actual fee, but it wasn't a lot. I mean, it was very low. I mean, I'd like to think it was, you know, the guy I used was under £100. I think it might have even been £50. I mean, it was just a line. However, there was an added complication that I'm obviously splitting two properties and the garden, and without going into it, there's only one sort of throughway. So although I think I was pretty confident, I can just draw a straight line that carries on the middle of the properties to the back of the garden, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wanted someone to look at that properly with the right ruler and everything else to make sure that we'd done it officially. And I think he the guy I've got was very good. Just said, look, it's going to take me half an hour. He said it really is just a red pen. He was very open about it. So to answer your question, do I need a conveyancer and whatever the other?
What type of person was this? So the other one I've seen as a possible might be a land surveyor.
Yes.
Is this just a red pen person?
He's much more than that. He was, I believe, from an architect's.
Oh, okay. So architecture of some description.
Yeah. So, but he was quite overt and said, look, this is a very small job for me. But then I had to send it on to the conveyancer, who would then update the title plans and submit it to the Land Registry. And they then requested an expedition of the submission. Bloody hell, it's a lot of long words there, isn't it? But it was because it might have been going on for so long. To do it oneself, as you've looked at, I don't know. I'm sure it probably is simple, but there's probably a number of different elements to look at.
I think it's probably one of these things that's really, really simple when you know how. And the trick is knowing how.
Yeah.
And we just don't. So
it's time versus money equation, isn't it? It's you probably could if you've got a spare day, or for something that simple, if you've got a good conveyancer that you work with, they can do it. So my title split was just a challenge because, as always, so I bought two properties on one freehold. So I was splitting the freehold to obviously split them into two properties and remortgaging at the point of split. Mm-hmm. So to do that, I had to pay for the existing bank's solicitors so that we could split the freehold with them, pay another set of solicitors to undertake the actual legal elements of splitting the freehold, and then have to pay for the solicitors for the new bank at point of splitting to remortgage. So guess who's making money out of this at the moment? And it's not me. I can tell you that. It ain't me.
No, the legal profession is doing very well from it, aren't they?
And they put legal profession and banks. That's who's making the money.
But it is now all completed. You have split the title, you have remortgaged, and you are now the proud owner of two properties instead of one. Yes,
haven't finished the remortgage yet, so that's
no.
So that's going through. But it's been such a long process. It is one of those where when I finally got the email to say that here are your new title plans, I was like, oh, thank God, because it has taken best part of 8 months, possibly more, to get that done. So that's not to put anyone off. I think you can have straightforward title splits, but I think every one of these, when you look at training courses and everything else, and they say, oh, just it's planning gains. There are gains to be had, but there's a value exchange of time and effort versus this. And my experience is that a lot of cost as well goes into that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of experience too, especially the first time you do it. There's going to be a big learning curve and a lot of time investment required for that. But once you're on your 10th, it's probably probably a lot easier.
Yeah, and there's and my experience is a delayed gain. There's not an immediate gain, but there's a delayed gain in terms of I think now I have two properties as opposed to one. Yeah, for me it was more around flexibility, and as I probably mentioned on previous podcasts, just the opening up of mortgage products, which is increased flexibility. So yes, I can now sell one of those properties if I like and keep one, which is something which is on my radar. But equally now I've got a 6-bed and a 7-bed as opposed to a 13-bed, which now brings me back into a much more broader range of banks that are willing to lend on those properties.
Are you in a licensed? Actually, of course, they're HMOs and they're big enough that they will have to be under mandatory licensed. licensing, should I say. Did you have to update your license for that, or was it per property, so it was per individual house already before you went into this?
Yeah, because to be honest, they're two properties in all but name, in all but legal name. So they were always two properties. So we ran them as two separate houses because that's exactly what they are. There may have been a door between the two properties previously, but that wasn't the case when I purchased them back in 2017. And there's two front doors and so on and so forth. So as like I say, as far as the rest of the world's concerned, as far as the local council is concerned, they are two properties.
Cool. So at least that was nice and easy. At least you didn't have to make any changes around that as well.
No, praise the Lord for that small mercy.
In other updates, I know you've got a very painful one, which we might sort of gloss over quickly at some point. But I was just wondering if there was any update on your Croydon flat. Do you now have tenants in there? Because I think you said you'd secured a tenant for that.
We have got a tenant. They are due in at the start of August, so around the time of this podcast release. Mm-hmm. So that's good news. And what we did, so although we weren't sure on the market, what I have actually got a mortgage offer. So we looked at a mortgage offer. So I have a mortgage offer on the table, should I want it. But we're also putting the property on the market.
That was going to be my next question. So, yeah.
So like your situation, we're kind of like, for us, obviously being a flip, the best outcome would be a sale. So we put that on, but our view is to let's look at both. Clearly, we don't want to remortgage because the fees will become to between 4,000 and 7,000, I think, which eats into profit, obviously. However, if the property sticks on the market, well, I say stick, in relatively speaking, in terms of a flip, if it's on the market for, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks and we don't feel we're getting the necessary interest, then I think we'll push the button and remortgage it.
So with that flat and your other flat that you've recently been working on putting on the market, are either of them actually on the market yet? And what sort of interest are you seeing from those?
Yeah, so we've got the studio flat, which is on the market. And that's the one we've got in Kingston. And that's seen some good interest. I think it's only been on a week, but we had 4 or 5 inquiries. We had 4 viewings booked, 2 of which were cancelled, but we've had 2 viewings from people that we think were at the beginning of their property hunt at the outset. So, they may well come back. So I think signs are positive. We've put it on for, I think, a good figure, which is around the market value we think it's worth. So we're not, not pushing for more. We're just hopefully going to get the value. So that's good.
So you're aiming for a fairly quick sale if you can then?
Yeah, absolutely. Because this flat will fund our own personal purchase. So that's why we need to get that one sold, hopefully in the next 5 months. And then the one you're talking about, my experience, and obviously not with Emma, our previous guest, but my experience of a couple of estate agents recently is that they're very, very busy and haven't been great at responding. And we did look to instruct an estate agent. I gave him the keys, him or her, the keys, and then heard nothing for a week until we chased. So we've kind of said, actually, we know somebody else who's a bit more like Emma, actually, more flexible, independent, and we're going to go with them because we've got a concern that if they can't get the property on the market or do the photographs as quickly as we need, then we're concerned about, the sales element as well. So that one's not yet on the market, in summary. Okay,
so the one that is on the market, and you've had a couple of viewings, were they real life physical viewings, or and indeed related to that, is there a virtual tour or video or anything available for that? What process are the agents going through to sort of vet people or allow them to physically view?
Well, this one, it's a 30-metre square studio flat, so it's really simple for the estate agent. They literally walk. It's got its own entrance as well, so literally they'll walk with the viewing party, take them to the front door and just say, have a look around, which I think is the best way anyway, because it's a lovely little property. We've just redecorated it. We've furnished it, so it looks really good. And
there's no one living there at the moment, though, is there?
No, no, this is the tenants went AWOL. So actually the agent just goes there, says, look, I'll stand in the garden and you have a look around, and when you come out we can talk about it if you need to. And I think, as someone that views properties, as all of us view properties, more often than not, we know what a kitchen is, we know what the bathroom is. We don't tend to need to ask anything about the property, until it's about, the council tax or anything specific about the structure of the building or the makeup. So that works out quite well. So they come out of the viewing and then they walk away and have a chat. So to answer your question, no, it's not. I mean, to be honest, if they just want to look at the property, just go on Rightmove and have a look at the photos, and that gives them everything they need to be interested. And just a little addendum to that is that it's a studio flat. It's around the £250,000 mark in Kingston. And the makeup of viewers are as we would expect. It's exactly the market we expected, which is one was an investor and one was a first-time buyer.
Have you had feedback from them saying they aren't interested, or and I mean, obviously you haven't had any offers yet, but what sort of status of those two potential buyers left things at?
I don't think we've had the actual feedback yet, so we haven't had the official feedback. But I think the initial feedback was, as I said previously, they're just both at the beginning of their property finding journeys.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one of those where they'll just go need to see that actually, in terms of price, this price point is about right for what it is, and then they just need to decide if that's what they want, or whether or not they want to move out further. It's those compromises that we all have to make at every time, which is actually for your money. This is what you get for your money. Because as I've said previously, it's an amazing little property. It's very close to the Thames, very close to Kingston train station. I mean, no more than 5 minutes. So it's a great little property, but it is a little property. But that's kind of what your money gets you. And
yes, in London, yes.
Yeah, but with the stamp duty break, it's for 250, it's a tidy little sum saved.
Yeah, quite. I mean, they make a big difference to a buyer.
Yeah.
Especially someone who's trying to stretch every pound, first time buyer or some similar.
Yeah, it's the place that my wife bought, and if it was a couple looking around, and I can understand if you're a couple, it's quite tight. But the difference between this, there's another studio flat that is for sale, similar price. In fact, the same price, I think, but it's a room. You open your front door, and you're just looking at a big room, which, being honest, for most of us would be quite depressing, at a certain stage. However, ours is, you go in, there's a little hallway, the bathroom, and then you go into the kitchen, and then there's a separate area there's a raised area for the bedroom and what is the lounge area. So it actually has the feel of a one bed flat. So that's my sales pitch. Don't need to sell it anymore.
We can include a link in the show notes if you want.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea for the show notes. Yeah,
it can't hurt, can it? There was one other thing that we had talked about mentioning, but so as not to finish on a too depressing a note, perhaps we'll just sort of gloss over it very quickly and say that you have a new utilities story, having invested days of your time to get your utility management under control in the last few months. You've suffered a bit of a setback with some depressing news. You've got some backdated bills to deal with, which were eye-wateringly large.
Yeah.
Is there any more to that story at the moment, or should we leave it there and come back to it in the future?
Well, let's leave it there, other than to say that these bills for 3 properties came to circa £13,000. So I'm just at the moment I'm speaking with utilities providers, and the next stage is an ombudsman. So I think once we've got a bit of a better picture and I'm not in so much pain, we can have a chat about it then.
I just don't understand how utility bills can be that big at all anyway. So yes, I'm intrigued to know how this unfolds. So we'll catch up in the future.
Yeah, we'll have that as a cliffhanger for if you want to turn the screws on my pain. We shall talk about that on an episode in the very near future.
Good. Something to look forward to. So I think that's probably it for us today. Thank you very much for listening. And You can find some details and show notes at thebusinessofproperty.com. Please do make sure you're subscribed and leave us a rating and review if you can. Otherwise, we will talk to you again very soon.
See you next time.